Well, as crime unfortunately remains too big of an issue here in Kansas City, it's always a pleasure to welcome on and say hello to the Fraternal Order of Police President in Kansas City. He is Brad Lemon, joining us on KCMO Talk Radio. And I wanted to bring Brad on because it looks like there could be some reporting or studies that are being shared this week within the Kansas City, Missouri City Council, implying that increasing funding for the police department, which is up to over $300 million in this town, is not correlating to lower crime. There's some articles that have been written about this on Tony's Kansas City. That's where I first saw this. And it was also linked to slides that are apparently going to be presented at the Kansas City Council Finance Committee and a meeting that they have tomorrow night at the library that's going to be taking place at 6 p.m. So Brad Lemon's here on KCMO Talk Radio. Brad, good morning. Thanks for being here as always. We appreciate it. Where do you think this conversation needs to be going when we talk about funding for the police department while also trying to reduce crime across the community?
Well, first, good morning. But I would say this. It's ridiculous to the correlation between the number of police officers we have or the amount of money that the budget is and our crime at this point. We've only had this first pay raise for the last 5 months. Recruiting takes a year to two to get people really in the door and running full blast as police officers. So there's going to be a lag between when the funding started and when the police officers that the funding helped start to really have a positive effect on crime. But I mean, the other problem is, and last week the narrative was completely different. Last week was we need a jail, we need jails. That's causing our crime problem. Now you've got these slides being shared that says, okay, it's not jails. It's the police department's fault that the crime's going up, and that's ridiculous. I mean, we're arresting these people over and over and over, and they're not staying in jail. So how do we change crime in Kansas City when there's not going to be any consequences for bad acts in Jackson County? I really want to preface everything we're saying by this. Kansas City's not that bad of a place. It's a safe city, except for one small spot, and it's all in Jackson County. Every single bit of this is in Jackson County, where we have 4 homicides, maybe 5 all year up north of the river, where 200,000 people live. But up there, they have a Platte County jail, a Jackson County jail, and they have prosecutors that put people in jail. So it's insane to say that this is the police department's fault. Really, it's more along the lines that we've allowed this community to become unsafe for political reasons, and now we want to figure out who to blame. And the reality is we need to stop doing that. We need to move forward. We need to build jails. We need to support our police department, our police officers, the job that they do, the men and women that get up every single day, put their uniform on, and keep this community safe. They need to be, supported. And every day they get up and they see some person puts that, this time it's going to be the mayor, putting things out about the city and police department. But really, who wants to come to a police department when you have constant drumbeat from a man who in 2021 instigated and put together the largest defunding effort of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department in the history of the department.
Brad Lemon's on KCMO, Fraternal Order Police President here in Kansas City. So then on that note, you mentioned Jackson County, you mentioned, getting jail space. What role have you tried to play in getting this city, which hasn't had really its own jail in 10 plus years now, to get that thing figured out, whether it's working with the county or building a loan to get a jail? What has that process been like for you?
Well, it's I've been in a bunch of meetings over the last 8 years since they've really closed and moved forward, and everybody wants to say, well, the finger pointing starts every single time, and at this point it just needs to stop. We need to get the jail built. But we're not going to do it on the backs of the voters, though, and just say, hey, we're going to pass this public safety sales tax. We're going to build a jail, and then we're going to rob it for every other thing that some constituency group wants. I mean, that's not going to happen either. So I think cooler heads need to prevail. We need to quit pointing fingers. We need to find say public safety has to be properly funded to act like the world hasn't changed and that it's not more expensive to do everything that we do. You think the water department hasn't gone up? Do you think the fire department hasn't gone up? You think that all these costs haven't gone up dramatically over the last 5 years? And the cost of doing business over the last 5 years post-COVID has been is substantial.
Now, when it comes to Jackson County, you mentioned, prosecutor, a lot of people will look at that and say, well, the success rate of the prosecutor's office on cases they go after and they pursue is pretty high, and they should get some credit for that. But as I understand it, just from talking to people in the police department, they're rearresting the same people over and over and over again. They know who these criminals are. So which one is it? Is the success rate one that the prosecutor's office should be proud of, or is it no, they're not prosecuting enough of the same people who end up committing the crimes over and over and over again in Jackson County?
Well, I mean, it's clear. Just because you get a conviction doesn't mean that that's a win for the community. I mean, we've got people getting ROR bonds on, released on their own recognizance for murder. We have a juvenile that was found guilty of second-degree murder not very long ago, just a couple months ago. He did a couple weeks in juvenile jail, and was out. I mean, so exactly, how do we solve the community's problems when there has to be some sort of consequence for felonious, violent, bad acts? That doesn't mean we can put everybody in jail. I think we can all recognize that we can't build enough jails. Well, I guess Texas can, but we can't build enough jails to keep the bad guy in. But you can't keep blaming the police department when we rearrest the same individuals over and over and over. And when you tell the community, people in the community that are intend to do bad things every single day, that's their mentality when there's no accountability. How do you tell them, hey, we're going to hold you accountable, but we're not going to when we find you guilty, we're not going to put you in jail? So what is that? I mean, how do you tell your children, quit doing something if you're not going to hold them accountable? It's just, at some point, the community has to rise up and say, enough's enough. Let's build a jail. Let's hold the prosecutor's office accountable, and let's hold the police department accountable. But we have our meeting every single month in the Board of Police Commissioners that I attend every single month, and there's multiple conversations all month long prior to that. So this isn't some department that's making mistakes. We're a department that's accountable to the taxpayers, but we need some help. We've got to be able to keep some people in jail.
Do you anticipate Brad Lemon, Fraternal Order of Police President on KCMO? I mean, there is a prosecutor's race between Democrat Melissa Johnson, who works with Quentin Lucas, and then Tracy Chappell, who is the Republican. Do you guys, as an FOP, plan to play any role in that race?
I think that'll be a discussion for most of the three FOP unions that are over here in Independence, Lodge 50 and Lodge 99, to talk amongst ourselves and make that determination. But I think I think we're around. We understand enough that it'll be it's a heavy lift in Jackson County alone to unseat a Democrat. That's the reality of the race. Tracy Chappell's a really good person. Melissa and I have had a lot of really good conversations. So we'll have to see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, you can be, I mean, I know this is a crazy concept, but you can be a pro-law enforcement Democrat. I mean, that's allowed to be a thing, right, Brad? So, I think we need to look at it from that perspective, too.
You used to have them. Used to have them in 2013. But Ferguson happened, and everybody decided we're going to start legislating, change rules and change ordinances to make crime, just to make it pay. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of Democrats out there that I have I'm friends with that 100% believe that the job of the police department has to happen, and there has to be consequences for when you do break the law. Now, understand, we're just one piece of this, law enforcement arm. We investigate crimes, we arrest people, mm-hmm. but once they're in the system and they're being dealt with, they have to be dealt with. It has to be swift, and for violent crimes, it has to be sure. People have to know that they're going to go to prison in Jackson County. And right now, that's not happening.
He is Brad Lemon, the Fraternal Order of Police president on KCMO. Brad, we always appreciate the time. Thank you for being here. We'll see how this plays out tomorrow at the Finance Committee, and we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Yes, sir.
All right. That is Brad Lemon on KCMO.